these invasive plants, they gotta go. I'll just take them out, and that will be my new art material. So I was thinking, how hard can that be? I'm a professional artist. I should be able to do this. Well, it is not that easy to just take a bundle of sticks and all of a sudden turn it into art.
Welcome to Zestful Aging Podcast, where I speak with change makers from all over the world, from every walk of life, who will inspire you to live with zest. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, and my mission is to bring you optimism about aging and help you make full use of the new opportunities that only come at this stage of life. And to find out more about this podcast, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. Did you know that art materials can be extremely toxic to source? Those beautiful colors and the lovely packaging are often mined halfway across the world, causing waterways to turn weird colors. Syracuse University art professor Holly Greenberg recently became aware of the environmental implications of her art making and is now on a mission to bring awareness to sustainable art practices. Along the way, Holly discovered the world of invasive plant species like European buckthorn. And as an educator, she brings her knowledge of environmental sustainability into her classroom, challenging her students to recognize our effect on the world we live in. When she's not teaching, Holly spends her time planting native gardens and making art with invasive species to draw attention to this serious problem. Welcome to the show, Holly.
Thanks, Nicole. It's great to be here and talk with you.
I'm really excited because this is a subject that I think some people know about and some people will be really interested in hearing more about. And I'm curious, just to start off, what is exactly, can you tell us a little bit as an artist, what the problem is with some art supplies and art materials? What are the issues?
Well, I think the best way for me to kind of approach this discussion is just to talk about my own personal journey of how I sort of the scales fell from my eyes. I have been an artist for over 35 years, and primarily I was trained as a printmaker, and I also make paintings, and then I recently started working in clay, and I have been using all sorts of art materials over the years, and I've been aware of the toxicity of them personally. So I've tried over the years to have a very kind of green practice, not using solvents, always wearing gloves when I handle inks, disposing of my empty cans in a responsible way, wearing a respirator when I use spray paint, things like this. But one of the things that occurred to me just about a year and a half ago was the impact on the planet in the creation of these art materials. And that was something that I don't know how I didn't think of this until just recently, because in my personal life, in my sort of non-artist life, just as a human being, I'm really aware of my sort of impact on the earth. I try to be energy conscious, like I insulate my attic, I rinse out my Ziploc bags, I shop local, I try to buy at the farmer's market, I eat organic, I drive a Prius, but somehow all of these things that I do in my regular everyday life, I wasn't bringing that awareness into my studio. And in my studio, I was continuing to use traditional paints that have cadmium and cobalt and titanium, and working with materials that have been mined on the other side of the planet, and not thinking about what destruction has happened to whatever river or mountain or village or the health of the people there that are creating these beautiful packages of paints and glazes and art materials that are just wrapped up so beautifully and then sold at these emporiums of art supplies.
So
And
it's a very long way from the origins and the destruction, what we can imagine. And I know even in knitting, some of the yarn dyeing practices are pretty nasty. Like some of
yes,
the rivers are different colors depending on what
exactly.
yarn they're dyeing that day.
Yeah, it's horrific. I mean, there's a lot in the news about when you said fibers, I was thinking of the fashion industry and how it is a huge polluter, and there's eco-conscious brands of fashion, and that actually is not my world. My world is I'm an artist, I'm an art professor, and in my teaching, I see students come in with tons of brand new art supplies, and they either use them or they don't use them. So a lot goes in the trash, and
Mm.
nobody's talking about where did these come from. What path of destruction has led to them to appear right here in our elite institutions of higher learning. So once I the scales fell from my eyes and I realized, oh, I cannot be party to this anymore. I cannot in good conscience buy a tube of paint and work on bleached paper and not think about what has happened in order for me to get this. So
Mm-hmm.
about a year and a half ago, I decided I'm not going to use any art materials that have been through any manufacturing process. Now, I do know a lot of sustainable artists that use recycled materials. They get their art supplies from Goodwill and use trash or whatever, and that's awesome. For me, I still didn't want to have anything to do with anything
I
that
see.
I didn't want to touch anything that had been through any manufacturing process. It's just what I set up for myself. So I so then I was kind of stuck, Nicole. I was like,
Mm.
what am I going to do? Because I am a maker. I'm like a consummate maker. I'm a creative being, and I love to make and problem solve, and I express myself through whatever production I'm doing. So
And colorful production, right? I mean, you are not one to. I think about some of the yarns that are not dyed, and it's like I don't really want to wear that. That's
uh-huh.
pretty bland. But I could see part of your dilemma would be being so expressive, wanting to use color, and now you're left with this, conundrum.
Yeah, I think well, it's interesting you say that about color because, yeah, if you look at my website and you look at the arc of my work over 30 years, there are some times when it's super colorful. But in the last 5 years since losing my husband, my colors have really been toned down to just white and black. It's like there's this. I've been thinking a lot about life and then the absence of life and how that is this moment in time. It's not gradual. You're either alive or you're not. And it's this demarcation in time. And so for me, the last couple of years, I have been working strictly in white and black.
Hmm.
But that's another story. And we're going to talk about other things besides that. So, so when I was on this mission to find what is my new art material, at the same time, I've been really getting into native plant gardening. And I've been reading Doug Tallamy's work and looking at the Audubon Initiative to turn our lawn space on all of our yards into a pollinator pathway for migratory birds. So by converting a small piece of your lawn into taking it, not having it be lawn, but having it have native plants that provide pollinator habitat for, birds, butterflies, bees, caterpillars, etc., etc. We can help save the birds. So I converted my boyfriend's backyard, which had zero plants in it. It was very easy. There was nothing to remove. To a native plant habitat, and we basically removed all the grass except for a few pathways, and now it's just this amazing Eden of plants that I had never heard of. I had been like a traditional gardener. I would go to the nursery and buy
Mm.
these, rhododendron or, most plants that came from Asia that are that you see in people's backyards that are quite common. So this world of native plants was totally new to me and really exciting. And I love it. I love it so much. And so the flip side of native plants are their nemesis, which is non-native invasive plants. There's a lot of non-native plants that are not invasive and they're totally fine. They sit in your lawn or in your backyard and they do nothing.
They mind their own business.
They mind their own business. But there are a lot of problematic plants that spread either through their berries or seed pods or underground, and then they choke out other plants that are trying to survive there. So I thought, wow, these invasive plants, they got to go. I'll just take them out, and that will be my new art material. So it's that I was thinking, how hard can that be? I'm a professional artist. I should be able to do this. Well, it is not that easy to just take a bundle of sticks and all of a sudden turn it into art. Especially, I'm not trained as a sculptor or a three-dimensional person. I'm more of a 2D artist. However, I embrace the challenge. And I've been on sabbatical now for almost a year, about 10 months. And I left Syracuse for the year and came to Evanston, just outside of Chicago, which is where I'm speaking to you from. And so it was kind of funny that I would leave, central New York, which is full of natural spaces, right, to collect these plant materials and come to urban Chicago. Oh boy, what have I done? Like, how am I going to find these invasive plants in Chicago? It's full of concrete. But lo and behold, there's a lot of habitat restoration going on here, and most of it involves removing these problematic invasive plants.
Hi, everyone. You may have noticed that Zestful Aging Podcast does not run a lot of ads. That's because I'm just not willing to endorse products that I don't have total confidence in and that I don't use myself. So it really means something when I tell you that after I interviewed Dr. Bill Rawls on cellular health, read his books, and learned about his high standards for quality control, I was sold. I placed an order for Vital Plant supplements immediately. I encourage you to check out both of my interviews with Dr. Bill Rawls and hop on over to vitalplan.com. If you enter Zestful15, they will give you a 15% off of your first order. I'm really excited for you to try these products. I think you'll be very impressed. Now, back to the show.
Could you talk a little bit more about, the invasives? And we talked about, some non-native plants just mind their own business. What's the impact? What are the consequences of invasive plants all the way down the line?
Okay, well, I can start with an example of a very prevalent plant here in Chicago. It's called European buckthorn, Rhamnus cathartica. It's not just in Chicago, it's all over the country. And this plant is problematic for a number of reasons. One, it produces berries, which the birds do eat, but it makes them sick, and it even kills small birds. And two, it's allelopathic, which means its roots send out toxic chemicals into the soil that make it inhospitable for other plants to grow there. And three, it reproduces so fast and abundantly, and it makes this big thicket of shady area that really prevents other plants from surviving and growing in that area. It's problematic because the local insects, whether that's a caterpillar or butterfly is a caterpillar or a bee or a fly or any of our pollinators, they can't eat those leaves. It's toxic to them. Wherever this plant came from in Europe, the insects there can eat it. And this is why it was so popular in this country, is because people could put it in their backyards and no insects would eat it.
I did not know that history.
So that's actually the case with all of our exotic non-native plants. We bring them in. Our insects did not grow up with them, right? Evolve with them. So it's not digestible for them. It provides zero nutrients. And so those leaves on your azalea plant won't get eaten. And that's why they look so beautiful. And that's why we're attracted to having these non-natives in our gardens, because the pests leave them alone.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, so we can imagine that it doesn't take too much to think that, well, if if our native guys can't eat them, then they're just bossy, and
Right. Well,
it's destroying the entire cycle that is supposed to be happening here.
right. So if we have a native plant, then a caterpillar can a butterfly can lay its egg on it. A caterpillar can evolve from it. The caterpillar can eat the leaf, right? We've all read the Great Caterpillar. So they eat the leaves, and then they can turn back into butterfly, right? And then the life cycle can go on. Most important for the birds, though, are that, we think, oh, let's put bird seed out and the birds will eat it. Yes, some birds do eat bird seed, but baby birds do not eat bird seed. You remember what they eat? The little worms.
Little mealy worms.
Right. They need soft-bodied creatures, these baby birds. So if there's no soft-bodied creatures in your garden, then the mama bird has nothing to feed their baby.
Oh my goodness. And I think, we're all kind of wrapped up in our own lives. And unless you read about this, I think, and you're deliberate about learning about it, it may not occur to you.
Exactly. Nicole, I knew nothing about this a couple of years ago. I didn't know what a native plant was. I had never heard of buckthorn until I moved to Chicago. I didn't understand the importance of them. And so really now what my work is about education. And, I am an educator, and it's what I am accustomed to doing. So I use the buckthorn. I'm actually using the buckthorn now to make my work.
And is it like consorting with the enemy? Is there something? How is it for you touching it and displaying it? What's that like?
It's funny you should ask, because the first time, well, let me back up a moment. When I first got to Evanston, I immediately went to the Ecology Center and said, are there any groups that remove invasive plants here? And they said, yeah, here, right here behind us on Tuesday mornings, join this group. So I went, and I just kind of put my head down and learned to identify the offensive plant and figure out how to take it out correctly. And I did this for a few weeks, and then slowly I admitted that I was an artist and that I was using invasive plants as my art material. And they sort of looked at me quizzically. Okay, whatever with this one. And then I was like, I have to bring some of this home, I said to myself. So I snuck a few pieces into my backpack, very small, little tiny seedlings. And the leader of the group saw me, and she said, you're not going to plant those, are you? And I was like, So they thought that was a little odd, but they got it. I'm using it as my art material. So I started kind of weaving and knitting and bending and soaking and hammering and trying to get it to do something. Actually, buckthorn is, for me, very hard to work with. I have other plants that are much easier. I've been working with daylily and clematis and English ivy and that are more cooperative. Buckthorn, not so much, because harvesting, pulling out buckthorn is about 80% of what we do every week in all of the groups that I volunteer with. It actually makes up 36% of the Chicagoland's tree canopy. So it's really problematic. So I spent a lot of time removing it, and I thought, this is the material I have to figure out how to work with. And I ended up just taping it to the wall of my studio just to sort of get it up there and out of the way. And then I made these patterns of just using them as is and taping them to the wall. And there was something incredibly beautiful about it. The roots are this purple-black color, and they're gold. And I'm just bringing home the very small seedlings. It can grow up to 20 feet tall and have a diameter of 4 inches. And that I haven't even begun to try to use. But once I stuck it to the wall, I realized this is engaging in a conversation that seems like an infestation in my room, in my studio. And that's really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the infestation of buckthorn because people like me didn't know anything about backyard. I just wanted to let people know about it. So I thought, I'm going to see if I can put it in some public spaces around Evanston. And I met with one of the local librarians, and she was so enthusiastic about me installing this infestation of buckthorn in her library. She spoke with the librarian at the larger branch. And so now, in the month of May, which is Illinois Invasive Species Awareness Month, I have 2 large installations in both branches of the Evanston Library that have about 500 pieces of buckthorn stuck to the walls.
Mm-hmm. And what are you suggesting, or what if I were to come in and look at your exhibit and I said, wow, I had no idea, what would you want me to take from that?
Well, the first question I think people have is, what the hell is this stuff all over the library? Which is that's the question I want them to ask. And that will lead to a video monitor there with a PowerPoint that the librarian and I worked on together to educate people on what is this stuff, and do I have it in my own backyard? And if I do, how do I identify it? And how do and what should I replace it with? And where can I volunteer to join some of these efforts around the area to remove it? So that's what you find out once you make your way over to the monitor.
I see. So that's great. Have your, I know that you're not back at Syracuse yet. I'm wondering, though, when you get back, how you imagine your colleagues in the art department will view this?
I mean, I think they'll be pretty embracing of it. I think everybody is becoming more and more aware of the problems of sustainability in the arts in all sorts of ways. And I think they would be excited to have me, I don't know, take the helm on this, maybe lead classes on sustainable art practices, introduce I've been meeting a lot of artists here in Chicago that already have a sustainable art practice, different than my own, but really interesting, and I'm eager to share those with my students.
So can you imagine teaching a class just on sustainable art?
I sure can. Yeah, I can. I mean, that is what I would like to do. And, if anybody that's out there listening to this has a sustainable art practice, I'd love to talk to you and include you in my curriculum.
That's so interesting. I know that there are some nurseries in the Ithaca area, am I right, that are just native. That's all they do, native plants.
Right. There's a great one outside of Ithaca in Groton called the Plantsman, and that's where I've been to get most of the plants that I use back there. And this is a big problem because most nurseries that you go to, whether it's Home Depot or your local garden center, will not have native plants. They just won't have them at all. To them, it's like a local weed. Why would they put it in a pot and sell it to you when you could go dig it up, in that field next to you? So it's really hard to find native plant nurseries. In fact, I have a new friend here who, faced with this problem, like we're pulling out all this buckthorn, but we have nothing to replace it with. She started in her own backyard a native plant nursery, and I helped her over the winter, and she grew, I think, 3,000 seedlings or 6,000 seedlings, a lot. And so those will go right back into the community. And I hope to do that too when I get back to Syracuse. I love planting, growing seedlings, and doing winter sowing. I gave a winter sowing sewing workshop here at the library, and I'm eager to grow enough native plants to help my friends in the community convert some aspect of their garden into a native plant habitat.
Yeah, my sense is that a lot of people are really hungry for this, and they just don't know how to do it or where to go. And it's clear you've really immersed yourself in and learning about it. It's a whole world that's opened up.
World. Yeah. And I guess I was thinking I should talk to you about this because of that Zestful Aging, how to, what does that look like as you're going forward into the third act And
Mhm.
me, it's about maintaining a curiosity and being open to not
Mhm.
knowing and being a neophyte. I absolutely love being a neophyte and not knowing the answers to things. I think when I was a young person, and maybe we're all this way, we want to sound like we know what we're talking about, or that we understand everything, and that we're an authority on anything. And so as a younger, when I started teaching back in my 20s and 30s, it was important for me to sound like I knew what I was talking about.
Mhm.
But
Absolutely.
now at the sort of tail end of this, I love not knowing and admitting that I don't know, and asking the most basic questions, and not being afraid to show that I know nothing about this. It's so liberating, it's so freeing,
Mhm.
and it makes me feel really young.
Yes. Yes, I can see that, and it's funny that you brought that up because as you were talking, I was thinking, how is your life phase also a piece of this? I know you've launched one child and you're about to launch another, and I know that you lost your husband, and wondering kind of where how it wasn't necessarily a coincidence, but it seems like if you'll pardon the pun, I think it was fertile ground, right, for you to open up to a whole new world.
Right. It could have gone either way, right? Like,
Ah.
you could, I think a lot of, as a parent, you're trying to control so many
Mm.
variables, right? Like making sure your
Mhm.
kids are healthy and fed and engaged, and managing the household and managing the job. You're kind of like this captain of this ship. And so you have to be in charge, and you have to know what's going on, and you have to keep it really dialed in. And as my kids are getting older, I am thrilled to be letting go of some of that responsibility. I don't need to be captain. I don't need to be boss anymore. And I love being this just curious, open mind that I don't have the answers to everything. It's very
Mhm.
liberating. It really is. And
Mhm.
also, as an artist or any creative person, when you allow for the unknown, right, the unanswered questions in your process, it's like having open doors.
Mhm.
And the contrast to that is, I have a plan. I know exactly what the next step is going to be, and I'm going to follow this exact path, and then the project will be complete. And everything is kind of sewn up, and you're on that very specific journey to the end result, whether that's a book or an artwork.
Yes.
And when
But it's a bit of an illusion, I think, right? Because we think we have control. We think we know how it's all going to go, but I I think that it's the really important things in our lives, as you have talked about, we don't have control. So, does it, I mean, I guess what I would say is we could try to have control, but I don't know that that's an effective way to meet the world.
it's definitely not an effective way to conjure the genius.
Mhm.
Right? Elizabeth Gilbert talks in Big Magic about showing up at your desk, at your typewriter, or in your studio every day, and being there and just putting in the hours, and being open to letting the genius come into you, the inspiration, right? The divine.
Mhm.
And I think that when I don't have my plan so clearly defined, I arrived here, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So open that it allowed that energy of divine inspiration that is much greater than my pea brain could ever imagine, right? Like, I couldn't have dreamt this project up, I'm going to say, on my own. It was really through this divine inspiration that it came to me, and I was able to make this work. So I think that letting go of control is something that at this stage in my life, I'm much more comfortable with. A
Mhm.
younger
Mhm.
parent or a younger professor, I felt less comfortable with, letting go of control or not knowing what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And people will talk about that's one of the joys of aging.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that freedom. And the research really supports what you're saying in terms of keeping a curious mind and also a higher purpose. And those are two factors that keep coming up in terms of longevity and a quality aging.
Yes, I think that it was not my intention to dedicate this year to habitat restoration, and yet that is what I've done, and I absolutely love it. And I don't want to be so internally focused on art making as I had been before. I think that most of my work over the years was an internal exploration of my life experiences, my ideas, my reflections on the world. And I am still reflecting on the world, but my everyday actions are joining these crews of teams of mostly retired people that are volunteering
Mhm.
to pull out buckthorn hour after hour.
Mhm. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Also, I want.
Are you getting great arm muscles,
Oh
Holly?
no, just a sore back,
Oh.
unfortunately.
Ah.
No, but I do want to say that like the second aspect of this year, besides the buckthorn installation at the libraries, has been meeting these eco warriors that again, these retired citizens that are just plugging away at habitat restoration, and none of them come from a background in ecology or environmental science. They're retired lawyers or retired city workers, etc. I am so impressed with their jovial attitude and wherewithal and showing up day in and day out through the cold Illinois winter and the blazing summer heat to do this, that I said, I really want to celebrate them and let their neighbors know that they're doing this. I think it's quite under the radar. Like, I don't think maybe their friends, maybe
Mhm.
their family knows. I'm not sure their neighbors and friends know. So I asked them if they'd be willing to be photographed and put on a wall as a mural. And so, in it, also for May, which is again Illinois' Invasive Species Awareness Month, I've made an 80-foot long mural on the side of the Evanston Arts Center that feature 20 of the main stewards of the parks around Evanston that have been leading the charge of habitat.
Mm. It's really so cool to see because they're very, very large mural. And then you also photograph the real person right in front of that mural.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yes, people when I was installing the mural over a 2-day period with a crew from the curatorial team side lot, lots of the stewards came to see it in action, and I was able to get photographs of them there.
Oh, wow.
And the mural called "Ask Me About Buckthorn."
That's wonderful. Well, I imagine that many of our listeners are going to say, I want to find out more about this nasty buckthorn and what I might be able to do to help, do some habitat restoration, even if it's something just as you said, getting rid of the lawn or a piece of the lawn. Where can people find out more about these efforts?
Well, I'm not an authority on every location, but if you have a local ecology center, I would go there and ask them if they have any volunteer days
Mhm.
for habitat restoration, which could be planting, which is really fun, right? Planting plants, not just pulling them out. And then also seed collection. That's part of what we do is when the native plants go to seed, we have crews of people that go out there and just hand pick the
Oh,
seeds off the
wow.
top of the plants. It's really fun. It's really fun.
Oh, wow.
And then they get put into big bins and get mixed for like wet prairie land or dry woodlands. And then in the fall, we go out and disperse the seeds.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of really fun ways to do kind of gardening. It's sort of gardening, but with a
Mhm.
crew of people, and it's not necessarily in your own backyard. And the people are so warm and inviting. So I would say, I guess,
Mhm.
Ecology Center, look online. Depends where you are. Some places don't need a lot of habitat restoration because the habitat is intact.
Mm.
I've found that Chicago actually needs a lot because there's 0.01% of original prairie left in the state of Illinois, which is the prairie state.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, it has been so fun talking to you, Holly, about this development in your life and this understanding and I think what they would call beginner's mind and how enriching it's been for you.
Thanks, Nicole. It's been great to talk to you about it.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. Our theme song is All I Did Was Wait for You by Kjartan Abel. Visit Kjartan-Abel, that's KJARTAN-Abel, ABEL.com to hear more of Kjartan's work. And our technical director is Stephen Litweiler.
Hello, Zesties. Well, many of you know that I've been a psychotherapist for more than 30 years, and I'm an expert in healthy aging. But what you might not know is that I'm also a midlife coach, and I help women like you clarify and design the life you want to live in your second half. A life that's vibrant and feels uniquely like you. Maybe you've spent your entire life caring for others in one way or another, and you're a bit stuck with how to move forward in this new phase of your life. Or maybe you're considering a career change or other big life transition. Or maybe you're in the middle of a life change you didn't see coming. You may be asking yourself questions like, who am I now? And how do I build a new kind of life for myself? Or how do I make the most of the time I have left? This stage in our lives is the perfect time to pause, recalibrate, and reassess where our life is heading and ask ourselves what deserves our precious time. Now is the time to focus on what brings you joy and a sense of deep, calm contentment. I love helping women discover who they are in addition to being caregivers. After our sessions, you will have a clear plan for making your life more vibrant and deeply satisfying. You will feel a sense of control because you will be making choices that are perfect for you. And you will feel more confident because you will have an individualized blueprint to follow. And because you're a Zestful Aging podcast listener, I'm offering a special package deal. Contact me at zestfulaging.com right through my contact link. Time is truly precious, and there's no time to waste.
And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest. See you then.